Hi, welcome back to MexAir RC's set of videos for the X4MR250 racing quad. What we have here today is just a general assembly of the entire airframe. We've shown on our other videos how you would install the motors, put the wires in, and other details on assembly. What I did not show earlier was how this model is put together in its entirety. So this is one that we've already installed the motors and the airframe is built. So if you decide you need to take parts off of the quad and reassemble them, this will at least give you a good idea how things go. I've started here with one that's partially assembled just to speed this up a tad. Anyway, we've got one arm on and you say, okay, I've got a fastener on the bottom. This is what I refer to as the threaded cone washer, and it will hold the bottom arm in place when tensioned with the screw. And very simply, this is where you would start in putting the entire model together. Make sure that you pick an arm with the 3 holes for the motors up on the top, and you'll notice that there's a space where the wires would come out when you thread them through. Over there, that space should be facing inward towards where your speed controls will eventually go. You take the stainless steel screw, of which you'll have 2 in there, and you place the little cup washer, aluminum cup washer, on it. Just simply press it into the hole where the arm goes, put the arm on, and you take your cone washer. It's threaded, and you screw that threaded screw all the way up to the body. Once you get the threads started, of course, but simply just right up to the body, and then you just take your Allen wrench and tighten it snugly but not too firmly. You'll see a dimple will form in this area here, and that's again sort of acting like a lock washer, and it helps to snug it up in place. Does not have to be too tight. Notice I am able to push it, but there is resistance. So long as you see a little dimpling in there, you're good. And here we are held at the bottom over here. Now that we've shown you how to place the arms in the front, we'll go to the back arms, but prior to doing that, we need to have our vertical supports all in place. Here I've shown you there are 4, and we have 2 more to place in here. They all go in exactly the same way, but you simply pick up any one of the 6 tubes, and they're all identical, and they should press fit into the hole snugly. You may want to just check and verify there's nothing in the hole that you might have dropped or otherwise, so that it fits very closely and snug to the bottom plate. Now that we have all 6 of our tubes in place, we take the bottom, take the arm for the rear, and we place it to the bottom, assuring that the opening for the wire is towards the center, and the holes opening for the holes for the motor are on the top. Then we can take the long threaded aluminum rod, just simply place one of the cone washers on it, maybe a little over 1/2 of an inch on, bring it up from the bottom through the arm, and place it into the hole on the bottom up to the tube, temporarily fastening it with one of our thumb nuts. That the thumbs are supposed to work to put thumb nuts on, so we'll get our thumbs to work. There we go, and that's temporarily just holding it in place right now. We do exactly the same thing for the other side. Again, we take our arm, we have our motor lead holes up, we have the opening for the motor leads coming out that side. We just simply fasten it to the bottom, and we go up and in, right through the tube, temporarily making our thumbs work. Fasten to the top. Alright, That's temporary. They're floppy, they're loose, and that's okay. For the balance of this, again, we're going to temporarily place our long rod with a thumb nut on it down, long rod with thumb nut down, short rod, thumb nut, short rod with a thumb nut, and you see we have some structure starting to come into place just like this one over here that has it on already. So right now, when we turn this over, what we have are 6, 7, 8, independent threaded sections coming out here. At this point, we'll take our bottom plate and we are going to set it in place over these 6 studs that are sticking out. These we'll get to later. So, in order to be able to properly place these parallel to the main frame, we're going to have to insert our aluminum spacers. The 5mm, those are the short ones. One goes on that rear arm stud, another one over here. We'll place one on the front arm, the other front arm, and then we have the longer of the spacers, and those are 7mm long. We place 2 7mm on here, like so. And if you were to line this up and you look across here, the depth is parallel with the body. Now we can take our bottom plate, the longer back from the screw hole that you might see right here. It's a little longer here than from here to front. Goes towards the rear, and you simply place that shiny side down over the studs, and everything should go nice and neatly. You may have to manipulate very slightly to get that on there. Now once on, and I'll do this for one, and then I won't bore you. We'll cut the video here for a moment while I do the other 5. And just very simply screw on the nuts to each one. You may have to hold the other side or put a little pressure on the rod to keep the rod from turning as you screw the others on. Alright, now what I've done here, since I broke off to put the rest of the thumb nuts on, is I added the thumb nuts to all 8 studs. I placed the 2 studs in the front, again, from the bottom here, and just put these on temporarily in place. I have thumb nuts up on the top now, holding all the rods in place, and it's starting to look like something. Okay. Now what's key, and the reason I wanted to hold at this point, is to show you that, if you recall, we tightened up the front arms so that they're under tension. Okay, and they're difficult to move, but easy enough, is certainly if you were to crash, to absorb the shock. The back are floppy. This gets a little tricky, but it's not hard. Here's where we temporarily placed our cone washer, and it's threaded on to the bottom, and we need to draw the cone washer up. Notice that here I've threaded these nuts on so that it's almost flush or pretty close to flush on each one of these, okay, with the threaded rod. The cone washer rests right up on top of that, but there's a gap in here. So what we do is we now draw that assembly up using the upper nut, and it brings that cone right up to the bottom and adds tension. Now I showed you what's happening. The point in time when you actually tighten that to get that arm snug is after we put the top plate on, but you needed to see what's happening there, and likewise it will have to happen here too. When I snug the top up, it draws that tight so that this is now firm in place. It's still temporary though. Now we just simply, using these temporary nuts on top, we take our top plate with the slot facing forward, this being forward, the rounded end here, lining it up against the slot in the main body. Those two slots are used to set in the camera plate. This is the front-looking camera plate. So I'd be removing these nuts and just simply placing this right on top through them. Now that we have our assembly together, and we know we're going to be pretty flush here at the top. So at this time, I take the top nuts off. And now, we just simply, after the nuts are off, place the top plate over. Everything should line up pretty well with some minor wiggling. And that one lined up so well, she just dropped right in, and that one did too. I'm going to temporarily start with the two front ones. One or two threads of the nut on top. Not to go all the way down, just one or two threads. And the intent there is to keep the front a little loose because we're going to lift it very, very slightly when we put the camera plate in. And we do want it on, but we don't want it on snugly. So using my dumb thumbs again, we go ahead. The two front ones are on temporarily. And we're going to put on the rear. And again, to keep it from spinning all the way down through the bottom, putting a little tension on the rod on the side will keep the rod still while I tighten that up. I now have some tension. I can tighten it up, get some reasonable tension there, and have the rod pretty close to flush up at the top. And do the same thing with the right rear leg. Right rear as far as the quad is concerned. And again, some tension, a little bit more. Very handy thing with thumb nuts here. I can actually tighten both sides, top and bottom. The top, though, is what's pulling that threaded beveled fastener up to tighten the legs. Now back to the middle. The middle one, just good and snug. It's not holding any legs in place, it's just holding the plates together. In that case, that last one, I have more now sticking out the bottom here and here than the top. To get them nice and even, I can hold the pressure down on the rod, push up from the bottom, threaded rod comes up, and I just simply go back to the top and draw it up from there so that the top of the nut and threaded rod are pretty close to even. And I'll just do that on both of them. Just looks prettier, not that it's any stronger. Alright, there we have these four now are fairly snug. Back legs are pretty snug. Front arms pretty snug. Nice and loose in the front. Take my camera plate. I'm going to have a camera plate that has a short and a longer protrusion, a little bit deeper, a little bit less deep up at the top here, and that's intentional. I take the shiny side out, insert it into the slot in the bottom, should fit fairly snugly. And then the top, rotate it back slightly because this can lift a little bit, and insert that into the slot. I have to be able to see the slot. My lighting here is in my face, and that's the camera. There we go. We saw it. Okay. Fits into the slot. When you're looking into the quad from the beginning, from the front, what you should have is a parallel bottom, parallel top, and the plates square. So when you look straight at it, this is helping to improve the rigidity of the quad. Now I just simply take those forward two thumb nuts, tighten the one. Notice I'm putting a little pressure on the tube on these as I tighten it. Just keeps that rod from turning any. And I give them a good firm tight. I see the end of the rod here, see the end of the rod here. They look pretty good and flush. And that is one very rigid structure, extremely rigid. I recommend you do take it. Make sure there is nothing loose on here. There should be nothing loose. And that the arms, again, still pivot and still have some tension on them. You may need to go back periodically. Just verify that. You can go from the top at a slight angle if you'd like, and you can tighten up on that stainless screw if you wanted to a little bit more to improve on the tension here. I'll do it on both sides here. Okay. And that feels good. Lastly, in an earlier video we showed you how these standoffs that are placed over here, we inserted a screw from the bottom hole. This must be done before those front arms go on, because you notice you're covering them up, those holes at the bottom, when the arm is over it. And then the standoff is placed over the top when that screw is protruding, and you simply tighten it on. What we've done is also given you another pair of holes. Note that I have a set of standoffs here, but there's also a pair of holes here and one on this side over here. Hole here, hole here. I could have easily placed a standoff here and here. That's kind of rough because I'm just holding on by gravity, so that I have the option of installing my power distribution board or my flight controller, or both, either in this physical location or in this location, depending upon how you want to install your equipment, where you want your flight controller, and so forth. So I opted for the front set in this case. At this point in time, you can install your electronics, or you could have installed them long before putting on the top plate or the bottom plate, installing your speed controls, your motor. In this case here, this is sized, and they should just drop right, look at that, dropping right onto the 4 pegs, and that's where we install our power distribution boards on most. And then on occasion, optionally, we'll take another set of standoffs, place it on the top, screw it on, and put the flight controller directly on top. Same setup can be done one step back. We just showed you how to put the frame essentially together, and a little bit about the standoffs here. But lastly, we're going to show you how to put the legs on. It's not as easy as one might think, but it's still very, very easy. In any case, the reason we are showing you a frame with motors installed is because they must be installed first before you put the legs on. We've shown you how to do this in a previous video, but now we're ready to put our legs on, this being essentially the same as the other. The reason we do show you this is because if you don't recognize that you have wiring going through, and you should recognize that, there could be interference with the number 6 screw as it's pressed in. That's the whole purpose of doing this video, to make sure that you recognize that and put the screw in so you don't crimp a wire. It's going to be difficult to see and unlikely that you're going to see a wire in the hole in the video. But when you look through that hole, you will see the wire. Instead of just jamming the screw in there, crimping it, we take any blunt object, nice blunt object, and we manipulate the wire just very, very slightly to the side, and you can see that through there. Just push it to the side, start inserting the number 6 screw from the top. I don't feel any resistance. I know I'm not crimping a wire. And using my dumb thumbs again, this one's a lot easier than those thumb nuts. We screw it in, or you could even grab it from the bottom and do a little assist. They should be fairly firm. They should thread in. They may just drop in. If you press it hard, they will go all the way through, and that's okay. The reason that's okay is because after you've threaded the screw in, you take these boots, put one on the bottom, push it as far up as it comfortably goes, and notice that at this point in time it gets a lot of resistance. I'll just screw that all the way on up to the arm, and there we are. And you repeat that process for the other 3. If you like, and you say, okay, I don't want it standing so tall, these screws are easily cut with a pair of scissors with a good sharp knife to the length that you desire. Likewise, you can cut the rubber boot to the same size so that it fits from the ground up to the arm, and you can change the height to your wishes. We're done with main frame assembly. The rest is all yours, your electronics and your flying, and we hope you have a very, very good time. Enjoy the outdoors. Take care. Is he still recording? Would you like some faces in there just for fun?